This is the ASUS PX13, a really nice looking 360-degree 13-inch laptop, but it's not compromising on performance with AMD's new Ryzen processor. So let's take a look. Hello, my name is Brad. I review tech for creative professionals, and this is a really premium little laptop. From the pure matte black aluminum finish that looks fantastic to the gorgeous Pantone validated OLED display that's coming in at 3K. It's a little less than 4K. We're talking 2,800 pixels by 1,800 pixels. This thing looks and feels really good. Now, spec-wise, this comes with 1 terabyte of storage. It's configurable up to 2 terabytes. You also get 32 gigabytes of RAM. Also comes with a WPP stylus in the box as well. This laptop does come in at a premium price. The one they sent me is $2,000, but if you're willing to spec down your GPU a little bit, you can find one of these for $1,700. Now, the reason people are excited about the new ASUS ProArt devices are these new AMD processors. This one is one of the first laptops shipping with the AMD Ryzen AI 9 HX370. Nailed. You have no idea how many takes it took to get that name right. Yeah, the name's a mouthful, but these laptops are also part of Microsoft's Copilot PC Plus initiative that they've been promoting recently. I wasn't sure what to expect with this new processor. I tested out the new Surface Pro that came with a Snapdragon X a few months back. It was part of this same Copilot Plus initiative Microsoft's doing, and I was really impressed with the dramatically improved battery life and virtually no fan noise coming out of the Surface. It's also worth noting ASUS is releasing their own Surface-like tablet next month with a Snapdragon X processor. Going to be checking that out. Subscribe to not miss that one. But I wanted to know, does AMD come through with similar advancements with their Ryzen processors on their new Zen 5 architecture? And well, yes, this is definitely a step forward. It is in a different way. I did some research before getting the laptop just to learn more about this stuff. I'm not a benchmark guy. And when I was watching these videos, I did get caught up in the hype a little bit, but I'm a user experience guy. I like numbers as much as the next person, but I want to know, what is this like to use? What is it like to draw on? What is it like to create on? What was my actual experience using it? And power-wise, it was great. It was super fast. It was snappy. Everything I threw at it, it handled, even games. But watching some of those early videos that were benchmarking videos, marketing videos, I was under the impression that this was AMD's MacBook moment. And I think I actually saw some headlines that said exactly that. So I was expecting some of the power efficiency gains that we saw on Macs when they moved from Intel processors to Apple's own M1 architecture. M1 processors, anyway. And I'm talking in terms of the battery life and that sort of thing. And this is not that. Instead, what it is a step forward in terms of how much processing power you can get with a fair amount of efficiency. But I didn't see huge leap forwards in terms of battery life. So what I needed to do was go back, do an expectation reset. Because when I start comparing this to other Windows laptops that I've tested, then I was impressed. I think the reason people are excited about these new AMD processors is that big jump in power for just a little laptop chip. And also what this means for their more powerful desktop class processors down the road. But what it means now is you're getting a lot of power in a really, really small form factor. Now, going back to that battery life, I was getting about a half a day here. I was looking at my battery while I was writing this script on it. I was using about 25% of the battery in an hour. That was with me writing in a Google Doc and then maybe jumping over, testing something out in like Krita, Clip Studio, Photoshop, just to see how the pen was doing, go back to my document, writing some more stuff up, checking out a tab with a website in it to get some specs. So overall, that process, I was getting about 4 hours of battery life. Once I jumped in and started using more drawing programs, I was seeing closer to 3.5 hours. And when you compare that to other Windows laptops and how I use it, it's solid, but I don't see it as like a huge jump forward. The new Snapdragon X processors are doing that better right now. So if that's what you're looking for on these new Copilot Plus type PCs, that's probably the direction you should look in. But there are trade-offs going to ARM. The biggest being is that some apps and some peripherals did not work on those devices yet. Most notably, many of Adobe's apps just won't launch. It is not an option in their launcher. You want Premiere Pro, you want After Effects, Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Animate, none of those are working yet. And we're not sure when we're gonna be getting them. Here, we still have access to all of that. If you want to attach a drawing tablet to an ARM PC, you can't do that. Most of them don't work yet. You don't have to worry about that here. Another big pro is this guy has a laptop with GPU in it. So I have a GeForce RTX 4060 in this one. You can also, downsize this to a 4050. It's really rare to find that in something so small. Usually when you get a really tiny laptop, there's no GPU and you are making more compromises in power. This thing makes Blender rendering much, much faster. I don't have a lot of heavy rendering I do in Blender because I'm not doing animations. I'm not rendering a lot of cells, usually just one image at a time for my comic, but it is nice not to have to wait as long to get that rendered. And yeah, I was curious about gaming because I really enjoy it. I recently picked up Ghost of Tsushima, and just playing with that, I thought it performed really, really well. I did have to pop on some headphones to drown out some of the fan noise, but performance-wise, it was good. Hey, while I'm drawing this, I do want to shout out my website, bradsartschool.com, where I have some courses, one on learning digital art, one on learning to draw in 60 days. Some discount codes are currently on the site if you want to check those out. I do want to talk about the design of this laptop. I'm a bit of a design snob, so I really appreciate beautiful industrial product design. I have a 16-inch ASUS ProArt laptop from about 2 years ago, and it's interesting to see how the design language has evolved here. First of all, the materials they use on this device are much, much nicer. The old laptop was a matte plastic. It collected fingerprints the way old people collect stamps. This one is a bead blasted aluminum. It holds up really well to fingerprints, and generally it just looks really good. This is a beautiful matte black. There's so many computers that I've used that are black, but when you get them, they're actually like a dark gray, a space gray. Those are very nice looking laptops, but it's really cool to get something that is like black, like pure black. The design overall is simple, it's sleek. The elements that they do have on here, like the little texture on the hinges or the slight down angle that's leading into the keyboard tray, are really tastefully implemented. Another thing you're going to see on the trackpad here is the ASUS wheel. This is something that they've been putting in some of their other products. There was a drawing tablet that I reviewed last year. They had a wheel on that. That laptop that I had from a few years back, that had a wheel on it. This is my favorite implementation of that wheel, the one that's kind of recessed here and just slightly on that trackpad. If you swipe in from the top right of the trackpad, you're going to turn it on. Swipe again to turn it off, and a little wheel pops up on the screen. By default, you can use this to adjust the brightness of the screen or just the audio. But if you jump into a program like, say, Photoshop, you could do a lot more. ASUS has this ProArt Creator Hub, which lets you go in, customize that wheel with all your programs, so you could do things like change brush sizes, zoom in and out. The downside here is, since this is a 360-degree laptop, when you fold it over to draw on it, it disables the keyboard and the trackpad, so you're not accidentally getting a bunch of extra touches. So it's not quite as useful when you're actually using the pen. At first, that indented wheel on the trackpad caught me off guard because you're scrolling around with your finger and you feel that indentation. You're like, what's that? It only took me about an hour or so to kind of get used to it and move past it. Now I really like having it there. The one design touch I didn't really care for that much was the placement of the power port. It's a little thing, but it's kind of placed right here on the side. It looks kind of like a USB Type-C cable, but it's actually a custom DCI power cable, and they put it here to make extra room on the side for exhaust fans. There's a lot of exhaust here. There's a lot of pushing out of air. Powerful processor with the GPU, you need to do that in a small device like this. Now, we do have a good amount of I/O along the sides of this laptop. Next to that power port, you have an HDMI, USB Type-C, and a headphone jack. Along the other side, you have the power button, a mini SD card slot, a USB Type-A port, and another USB Type-C. Also included here in the box is a USB LAN port adapter dongle if you need it. This is a 360-degree laptop. You've probably picked that up by now, so you can fold it all the way back and over for drawing. I was using Adobe Fresco because it's so much more touch-friendly than Photoshop is. When you got the pen and the touch screen, it's just so much fun to use. And in Photoshop or Clip Studio, you're losing a lot of your keyboard shortcuts when you flip the screen over. Now, Fresco is kind of quirky. It's never been the most stable program for me, and unfortunately here it was really unstable. Now, first up, when you boot up Fresco, if you're in like a power savings mode, which I am, to just kind of save on battery because I need more battery, more than I need the power most of the time, it's going to kick you up to that higher power mode to use all of the features. This also means your laptop is going to run hotter. And while I was using Fresco, the fans were blowing hard the entire time. Between that and the occasional crashes, Fresco was pretty rough here. Using Photoshop, that also brought out the fans, but in terms of stability, was way, way better. Now, what about drawing? Well, the included ASUS stylus is an MPP pen. This is the same tech that you're going to find in the Surface Pro stylus. In fact, the Surface pens will work here on this screen, and this pen will work on the Surface screen. So you're going to get the same kind of performance. So if you've used one of those pens or heard me talk about one of those pens, you know what I'm going to say next, and that is, it's only okay. You can make this pen work like all MPP pens, but there is a fair amount of wave to the line just by default. I really have to crank up the smoothing in an app like Photoshop, maybe to like 40 or 50% before I can really get those lines looking the way I want them to look to use for my line art. But when you crank up the smoothing, you lose some of that accuracy, and that's something that this pen isn't really great at to begin with. So if you like draw a line and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to draw a line and like meet it perfectly, oftentimes I'm like, oh, it's just off a little bit, or I undershoot it. You can make this pen work, but you really have to adjust yourself to it, and I think there are other styluses out there that just do it far better. The other thing is palm rejection. This is kind of a bummer for me. In some apps like Fresco, I can adjust that. I can actually turn off my palm so it's not going to register those things. But without it, I was getting a lot of little dots made by my palm. In Photoshop or Krita, I was accidentally selecting the wrong layer, or I was changing some of the settings without realizing it. And that sort of thing can be really frustrating when you're drawing. And there was no setting where I could go in and say, ignore my palm in programs like that. Also worth noting, this pen does need to be charged. It has a battery in it. You can slide this back up, and there is a USB Type-C port tucked away in here. You also have two clicky little buttons along the side, and this comes with some replaceable nibs. The default nib that it comes with is hard plastic, so it's going to slide around a bit on that glass screen. I swiped it out for the Type B nib, which is the softest one that they offer here. It's got a little bit of a rubbery tip, and I liked how it felt. It's not exactly organic and natural like using a pencil, but it does provide some drawing resistance and gives me more control. So my overall take on this little laptop is that for the right person, it is fantastic. If you want something that's little, easy to carry around, but also beautiful, and you're not compromising on the amount of power that you're going to get out of the processor, here you go. But if you're looking for a primary art and drawing machine, the MPP stylus makes me hesitate from recommending it wholeheartedly there. There are just better pens out there to draw with. If you're going to be using a pen here and there, you could probably get by. But if you're going to be spending several hours a day drawing on this, I would pass on this one. But what do you think? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.